If a natural disaster struck a city and left a stadium full of orphaned children, how well would America respond to the crisis? What if there were 5 stadiums? Currently, there are 400,000 children in the United States who need foster care support. That's enough to fill 5 Super Bowl stadiums. Pastor Mark Gomez wants that to change. He's part of a national ministry called Project 127, and he's our special guest today on the Next Stage podcast with Rob Stout. The Next Stage is a podcast that helps you live a life of purpose, born out of your identity as a man and created in God's image. The show is available in both video and audio formats like Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, and more. For more information about Rob Stout or the Next Stage team, visit sherpaunlimited.com/podcast. For any resources mentioned in today's program, be sure to check out the show notes, which are embedded in this episode. Also, please take a moment to give this podcast a 5-star rating and share it with your friends on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. The Next Stage podcast for men is recorded in Erie, Colorado, and produced by Christopher Mann at resermon.com. Welcome to The Next Stage.
Does your sermon only get one squeeze? There's probably more juice in that sermon. ReSermon repurposes sermon content for optimal ministry impact. Learn more at resermon.com or email hello@resermon.com.
Hey man, welcome to The Next Stage, and I want to thank you for joining us. We are excited to have Mark Gomez today, and I just want to launch right in. Before we get to Project 127, Mark, I would love the men who are listening to hear your story, where you came from, and kind of your background, how you got into this really important area of our society. And so what first drew you into the foster care program and engagement in that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we had a big family. We have 4 kids, 4 biological kids at the time. And there were 2 things that really kind of launched us in. The first one was in our church, and I was one of the pastors in our church. We were preaching through the Sermon on the Mount, right? And it was my turn to preach, and the passage was the Lord's Prayer. And really thought deeply about what does it mean to pray for God's kingdom to come and his will to be done on earth as it is in heaven, and to actively participate in that. And so I brought that to our church. I preached the whole passage, but really asked them, what does it look like for us as a church? What does it look like for us individually to be not just praying for it, but participating in that? And went home and talked to my wife about that to say, this is something I'd really like to think through as a family. Meanwhile, one of the couples in our community group, they were going through the adoption process, and they were adopting a child from an agency in Texas, but they had to get certified. And the certification process is the same as the foster parent certification process. So they're going through this certification alongside families that are entering foster care. And they're hearing the stories and the statistics about the foster care system that they then brought to our community group. And man, we looked at that. We looked at the stats. We looked at the families that were in crisis, that needed somebody to care for their kids. And we said, I think this is what God would have us do to participate in his kingdom coming and his will being done on earth as it is in heaven. That kids need families, and kids need safety and security and love, and families need care. Families need somebody to come alongside them in crisis. And so that felt like the natural thing for us, where we were at with our family, to be able to step into. And so we went and got certified with our county, and started that journey.
Wow, that's cool. So it started with you and your family, and I'm assuming you've got foster kids in your family too. How many?
It was quite the journey. So we did foster care for about 8 years. We closed our home about 3 years ago now. Over the course of those 8 years, we had about 20 kids come in and out of our home, and we ended up adopting one. And so we have one kid forever. And her story is fantastic. I'll just really quick, I want to share her story.
Please.
We had talked that, we were only going to take kids around the same age as our kids. Like our kids were like late elementary, middle school. And we were done with babies just completely done with babies. No more diapers, middle of the night feedings, like all of that. No more bottles.
I hear you, bro.
Potty training. We'd gone through it 4 times and we were done. And so we agreed when we went into foster care, here's the range of kids we were going to take. And then the caseworker called my wife and said, we have a newborn who needs to come straight from the hospital. And my wife called me and I was like, we already talked about this, and she told me, she's like, I just have a feeling about this one. And so we took her at 10 days old, just smitten, fell in love immediately. Eventually the case was up and down as a roller coaster. She was reunited with her birth mom and then ended up coming back to care. And we ended up adopting her after a year and a half. But then her birth mom, my wife stayed in contact, maintained a relationship. Her birth mom went through recovery, got stable housing, had 2 more kids, joined our church, and now works for a local nonprofit helping the unhoused people in the South Denver area find housing, because at one time she was homeless and knows what it's like. So some incredible stories came out. I could tell stories this whole time if we wanted to, of the kids and the families that we got to meet. But we had about 20 kids come in and out, and we ended up adopting the one.
Hey man, it's Rob Stout with the Next Stage Podcast and Sherpa Unlimited. People ask me, what do you love to do most in life? Here it is. I love to talk to men's groups, like retreats, conferences, men's breakfast, I don't care, tailgate, night at the cigar bar, night around a campfire. I don't care what it is. I love to talk to men and to hear what's going on in their life, but to impart wisdom and to talk about living as a man of purpose, born out of identity of who God has made you to be. Man, if that's something that you're like, let's go, just simply email me. The Next Stage at SherpaUnlimited.com, and let's set up a time to come talk to your men's group, your breakfast. We could do it online. I don't care where you are in the world. Email us. Let's figure it out. The Next Stage at SherpaUnlimited.com. That's amazing. I've got a friend of mine who I went to high school with. Actually introduced him to Christ when we were in college. He and his wife have had a struggle getting pregnant for years and years and years. And in their 50s, they adopted 5 kids.
Wow.
5.
Yeah.
I think 2 of them had to go back to their birth mom. And that was incredibly hard, but ended up going through full adoption with 3.
Yeah.
And amazing hearts, amazing people. That's
fantastic.
That's cool.
Yeah. And it really, like, when I think about, Paul talks about sometimes God does exceeding abundantly above all that we can ask or think. Like those stories are there where I didn't have it in my imagination of, adopting a child and also bringing her birth family into our extended family. Like that wasn't even a consideration, and God did something incredible that cool. we didn't even imagine.
Well, and where else would the church show up? In fact, let's just get to that right now.
Yeah.
Where does the name Project 127 come from?
Yeah. So Project 127 is based on James 127, which I grew up in like these circles where we use the KJV. Project 127, we always read it in the NIV. I always read it in Mark's version, which is like a mix of the two, but I'm gonna read it to make sure I get it right. Religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this: to look after orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself from being polluted by the world. And what we get from that, James is talking about, if you read James 1, he's talking about the tongue. He's talking about the ways that we can be destructive, the ways that we can get ourselves into trouble with the tongue. And then he jumps into, here's what religion really looks like. You talk a big game, but here's what religion is really supposed to look like at its core. It's supposed to look like caring for the vulnerable. And he lists to, if we read in the Bible, we see over and over, there's this quartet of the vulnerable. There's the poor, the orphan, the widow, and the immigrant or refugee. And over, God commands Israel to care for them. God judges Israel for not caring for them. God demonstrates his heart for them. The New Testament, over and over, we see this emphasis. And James is calling that out. He's saying, if you want to practice religion that God really values, go find the vulnerable among you and make sure they're cared for.
Yeah, I love that. And the bigger theme of James is very simple. It's faith without works. And interestingly enough, James is the brother of Jesus.
Yeah.
Saw this whole thing. And and they came out of a poor family too, more than likely.
Yeah.
At least not well off. But it could be that Mary was a single mom. We don't know that for sure, but we're pretty sure.
Yeah. It seems like they experienced some of that trauma of poverty and maybe fatherlessness. At some, like, we don't hear a lot about Joseph after the birth narrative, and you wonder if some of that is formative for James as he's writing. Like here's what Christianity should look like. It should be caring for people without fathers.
Yeah.
And so what happened was at Colorado Community Church, the pastor, Robert Gelinas, he was made aware of some of the statistics around kids waiting for adoption in Colorado. And he said, we have to do something about this. This is not right. And so he started this organization. The offices are still housed at Colorado Community Church in Aurora there. But it was based on this verse to say, we're going to create a nonprofit that is targeting kids who need families. And so that's kind of where it came from.
That's incredible. And can you take us through some of the things, not just in Colorado, because literally listeners are all over the world, right?
Sure.
But in the U.S., how many kids are in the foster system at any given point?
Yeah. So, well, I recently saw, like our organization posted some stats around the Super Bowl, just to kind of understand the scale. Like if you took that Super Bowl stadium and you filled it up 5 times, that's the number of kids within the foster care system across the United States, somewhere around 400,000. I'd encourage people to go and look at the Christian Alliance for Orphans, CAFO. They've got statistics around, statewide, national, but it's staggering. It's convicting, like especially when you look at the number of kids that need care compared to the number of families that are there to care for them, compared to the number of churches in the metro area, the numbers aren't adding up. If we agree with James that religion, as it should be practiced, is caring for the vulnerable, that the one of the primary expressions of our Christian religion should be to care for the vulnerable, we would expect to see, an overflow of families, like a kid having the option to choose the best family that's available based on their needs. And instead, what we get is they are desperate to place a kid wherever they can. And that's why when we told the county we're only accepting kids from 5 to 12, they called us about newborns, and they called us about teenagers and 18-year-olds, and because they just didn't have families ready to take those kids. So yeah, the numbers are staggering. It's in some ways disappointing. In some ways, I wonder what Paul would write to, the church in Denver, like he did to, the church in Corinth or Ephesus.
I tell you what he would write?
Yeah.
He would be like, thank you for jumping on the abortion bandwagon. Like, let's end that. But you've got to step up now, church. Don't just vote one way or the other, or be glad Roe v. Wade got kicked back to the states or anything like that. Step up, put your money where your mouth is, put your faith into works, and jump in to be part of the solution. Because it is so hypocritical to say, listen, oh yeah, we were anti-abortion. Well, that's easy because that issue's not here in my house.
It
It
doesn't
may
affect
be.
me. Yeah.
And
Yeah. Directly.
painfully,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's been men have paid for abortions, women have had abortions.
Hmm.
I'm not discounting that in any way. That is unbelievably painful. But to then sit back and go, oh well, that kid on the street, man, if they just did better, that woman
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
street who's sitting there with two kids, if she just got an education, like, are you
Hmm.
kidding me?
Yeah.
Paul would be much more eloquent, but I think he would figure out how to write that really well.
Yeah, yeah,
Really.
absolutely. Yeah, I think there's a lot to say about an expansive pro-life ethic that says I want to care for the vulnerable that are in my community, whoever they are, wherever they are. I want to find those people that are struggling to the point that they feel they need an abortion and see like what is causing that, what are the needs there, what's underneath that, rather than just coming and yelling and attacking. And let's have this expansive ethic that says I am invested in the good of the people around me, especially the most vulnerable.
Much more eloquent, like I said, an expansive pro-life ethic. And you mentioned it earlier. This is not new. Like, this was
No,
part
yeah.
of the fabric of Jewish culture in the Old
Yeah.
Testament.
Yeah.
It was part of, in fact, farmers were
Yeah.
instructed to leave a portion of their fields
Yep.
so that
Leave the corners. Yep.
orphans, widows, people in poverty,
Yeah.
newcomers who were actually journeying through, or they were immigrants, and actually they could join
Yeah.
Judaism, by the way. It wasn't
Yeah.
exclusive, but leave the corners. And there's a
Yeah.
famous story in the Old Testament about somebody who was on a journey who the guy left some, and amazing story of Esther.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Ruth. Sorry, Ruth.
Ruth. Yeah. One of my favorite passages to illustrate this idea of that continuity of this idea. We were preaching through Galatians, and in Galatians, Paul is talking about. He's telling the church of Galatia. We had this big council in Jerusalem, and we're trying to decide. And a lot of Galatians is about, do we need circumcision? Do we need to follow the law? Is all of that required and part of this new religion we're launching? And it's not a new religion; it's a continuation of the old religion. But how does it continue? And what he tells them is like, we had this whole council and decided you don't need to be circumcised anymore. But the one, and I miss this, the times that I read through Galatians, he said the one thing that they encouraged us to do, the one continuity that they wanted us to have, was that we would care for the poor, which obviously we were going to do, So it's like for Paul, the continuity that he sees from the old covenant to the new covenant is expressed in the care for the poor. We don't need to worry about circumcision anymore, but man, we better not forget the poor and vulnerable among us. That needs to be central to whatever we're doing now. And I think, James echoes that. I think Paul, there's a passage in 1 Corinthians 11. This was the passage growing up, like, that would always get preached at communion, right? He that eateth and drinketh unworthily eateth and drinketh damnation to himself. And as a teenager, that was like terrified,
Especially when it's in King James. Like,
yeah, like it carries more weight because it sounds Shakespearean, right? And I remember having that tension, like, am I worthy? Am I not worthy? Should I eat it? But if I don't eat it, then they'll know I'm not worthy, like people around me. And that's not at all what it means. I think what Paul gets at is they're actually eating a dinner. And he says, those of you who are rich and wealthy, you are coming and you are getting full and drunk, and the poor are going away hungry. Like, that is not at all how it's supposed to be. When you do that, you're eating and drinking damnation yourself. In other words, you're missing out on the kingdom. So it's there throughout. Like, we can trace this whole message through Old Testament to New Testament of this care for the poor and the vulnerable.
And jumping into the future. Jesus
In the
tells about a
future,
time
yeah.
in the future where it will be, I was at your door. You didn't give me anything to drink. You didn't give me
Yeah,
anything to eat. You told me to go
man.
away. It's like, okay, this is incredibly central to what we
Yeah.
say we believe, right? Let me
Matthew
let me let me
25.
let me
Yeah,
shift
yeah,
gears 1 second, okay?
absolutely.
Um, what is the impact
Hmm.
on society for kids who, for lack of a better term, fall through the system? They're
Yeah,
they're one of
yeah.
these 400,000
Hmm.
people,
Yeah,
and where do they go? Like what are the
yeah.
stats?
Yeah, yeah. Man, I wish I had exact stats available. So, one of the things that we do at Project 127 is it's a new program. We just started it. Alyssa Dudry is running it. She's fantastic. She is leading a mentorship program for kids that are aging out of foster care.
Mhm.
Because what we see is the statistics for homelessness, suicide, high school dropouts, not going to college, addiction, like
Trafficking.
all of those things, trafficking, all of those things are orders of magnitude higher for kids that are aging out of the foster system without any permanent placement. So yeah, yeah, it's scary, and this kind of illustrates. I don't expect everybody to go and say like, oh, Mark says I have to be a foster family in order to obey Jesus. I'm not saying that. Foster care is not for everybody. It's for more people than are doing it, but it's not for everybody. But everybody can do something.
Yeah.
Okay, so you could sign up to be a mentor. You can go to project127.org and look at the mentorship and say I can give an hour or two a week to help a young adult launch into adulthood and answer questions like how do I do my taxes, how do I create a resume, how what I just had a baby, I don't know how to handle it. One of our placements, we took a newborn at one point, not the one we adopted, but it was really just the mom had no idea how to care for a baby, and she just needed somebody like my wife to be able to text and say he has a fever, what do I do, the kinds of things that you would reach out to your parent about, and they don't have that. So like I can give an hour or two a week to mentor a teen, or we have a neighbor program where you can provide a meal once a month for 6 months. You're already cooking. Just make a little extra for a foster family and engage in a relationship to see what the system is like. So,
Mhm.
um, yeah, there's something for all of us to do to say like we are doing this as a community. Foster care is incredibly difficult. Like it is. There's a reason that we did it for 8 years and then decided to stop. And it's not for everybody. But in order for foster families to be successful, they need this big support system around them. And so there's something for all of us to do for those kids that are falling through the cracks. We're looking at creating programs to identify them, help them, try to get them on the right track, get them launched. Because it's cyclical. Like this problem, like our daughter that we adopted, her mom was in foster care and aged out of foster care and never really had a permanent family, and lost several of her children before her daughter came to us. And so we want to arrest some of these cycles before it continues to propagate.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the message here, and we'll continue coming back to this, kids need dads. There are
Yeah, yeah,
400,000 opportunities that you can
yeah.
step into in some way. And the answer is
Right.
not, well, that's someone else's lane. I'm busy, in my suburban home and driving my suburban probably. Unfortunately,
Yeah,
some people do drive those. And
yeah,
yeah, I'm a F-150 guy, so you suburban people. But
yeah, yeah,
yeah, this is not someone else's job. And
yeah.
before we jump into some of the real, like, hands-on what we can do, how men
Sure.
specifically can be involved, we're going to take a quick break. And I would love, men, we don't talk about this a lot on the show, but I would love to come talk to your men's group, your church, your conference, your Saturday morning breakfast thing that you do. And we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. And when we do, we're going to dig into how practically you can get involved in this. Men, welcome back. We're with Mark Gomez of Project 127, and so excited to talk to you about this. And here's what this is not. This is not a smack upside the face, a kick in
Yeah.
the butt saying, do better, do more. It is we're shining a light on something that can forever change someone's
Yeah.
life. And so the question I want to ask is, before we get to that, is how do men play a specific role here, Mark? And why are men so needed in
Hmm.
this situation?
Yeah, I think a lot of times when we look at kind of differentiated roles, it's very easy to kind of fall into this idea that child rearing and family stuff is more of a woman's lane, right? I think there's a reason that, at Project 127, we have 15 staff members and I'm the only man on staff, because we tend to have this idea that caring for children is primarily a woman's activity, and I think what we need to understand is children really need that affection and attachment to men in their lives too. They need to know what like a strong, secure man looks like, and what to look for. If they don't see it, they don't know what they're looking as they grow into adulthood, and they try to become men themselves. They look for partners out in the world. They need to deeply understand what it feels like to be cared for, and loved and attached to a good, strong male figure. I think that's important. I think obviously that's not to take away from families that single mother families that
Not at
um,
all.
are struggling with that. But I think even in those cases, the church should be excellent at coming around and saying, we want your child to experience the love of a lot of different people, and to see what Christ-like manhood can look like. And it looks like laying yourself down for others. It
Yeah.
looks like protecting and caring for and bearing under, and all of these things. They're attributes of love that we all experience. But I think a lot of times us as men, we forget that our kids really need that. And the kids in the foster care system, a lot of times, we had kids that experienced domestic abuse at home and didn't know how to react to a father and needed to experience a father who is gentle and kind and loving
Yeah.
and caring, and forgiving and all of that. So we need to be able to model these things so that the next generation can reproduce that, and can continue it. So yeah, I think there's so much men can do. I think men should be deeply involved in the care of their children, deeply involved in their lives, and we shouldn't have this strict binary of the women will care for the kids and the men are the providers, and actually we're going to work together. We're going to collaborate and cooperate, and kids need that attachment.
100%. 100%. Boys need that. They will learn how to
Yeah,
be a man.
yeah,
And I'm a girl dad of three.
yeah,
I was told a long time ago, they will marry someone like you. And I was
yeah,
just like, oh
yeah.
no. I was like, what? Mostly
Right.
because I'm not like, I got my act together. And we all know that in my
Sure.
home.
Yeah.
So it's celebrated daily that Rob doesn't have his act together all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they're high school friends that
Yeah.
I know who didn't have dads. They
Yeah.
look to other men in their life to give
Hmm.
them value, to give them
Yeah.
what they want, and they went after it. And it was
Hmm.
easy pickings for a lot of guys who were like, "Oh, I'll make you feel valued,"
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. And a
oh
lot of
man,
guys who didn't have that strong, like,
100%.
male, attachment where they know not to be a predator. They
Yeah,
know not to take advantage of people. they are a protector, not a predator.
Yeah.
I think it's hugely important.
100%. 100%. Man, kids need dads. I mean, there are 400,000 opportunities to go find a way to be involved in this. And I'm excited, Mark, that you're here. But let's jump into some practical ways.
Yeah.
Like you already mentioned mentorship.
Yeah.
Tell us some other ways. Like, so I'm a dad. Maybe I'm an empty nester, and
sure.
Same way that you were like, no babies. I'm like, okay, we've got grandkids now. So
yeah.
But how could any person, how could any man be involved in this to be able to communicate God's love in that way?
Yeah, I think it's important. So there's a few things that I would say. One, identify families around you that are doing this work and encourage them. Okay, so this could be as easy as within your church, just try to find out, are there any foster families? How can I encourage them? Maybe it's a gift card to help them pay for dinner, or one thing that was really meaningful for us, and I tear up a little bit because this is emotional for us. But anytime we would have a foster kid, my parents would embrace them, and if it was a birthday or Christmas or something, they'd show up with presents as if it was their own grandkid. Sorry. But those kinds of things are just so meaningful. To be able to show up for a kid and say, you are valuable, you are important, you're part of this community. So identify the families that are doing the work. If they're in your church, if they're in your community, if they're your neighbor, and find ways to make them feel valuable, find ways to make those kids feel important. And that's a low barrier. You don't have to go get certified by the state. You don't have to do a background check or anything. You can show up and offer support. You can, like I mentioned before, you can be a mentor and say, if you're an empty nest, you're already launched, you're already heading towards retirement. You can offer that advice to a young kid that's just entering adulthood to say, here's how you can prepare and get ready to launch successfully, and here's how you do your taxes, and here's how you write a resume, and offer that. You can do the neighbor program and provide a meal. And I would encourage, like, for families that do the neighbor program, I think a lot of times what happens is the wife makes a meal and the wife delivers the meal, and the husband pays for it, they're the provider. Like, I would encourage you as men, help make that meal, help put it together, go along and meet this foster family, and offer that encouragement. Say, hey, we're with you as a family, we want to support you. I think asking your church to talk about it, right? That could just be like a pastor talking about foster care and doing some research, learning about it and talking about it from the pulpit. Or it could be having myself or someone from Project 127 come to your church and set up a table and say, here's what foster care is like, and here's why we think it's important, and here's ways you can be involved. So there's my plug. I would love to come to your church if you're listening to this.
Mark, we're gonna have your email, all your contact info on here. And I love your heart, and this is a place where tears are welcome, because it's like the story that I can relate to is pictures of my friend Dan and his whole family. They look like a bunch of Norwegians. I mean, they're all like Swedish, I think. I mean, like blonde hair, blue eyes is every one of them. And right in the middle of those pictures are a couple kids that have different skin tones and just enveloped in fact, our family, I've got 6 nephews, 3 of them are adopted. But enveloped in. And Dan told me, he goes, to watch a little boy go, what, this birthday cake's for me?
Yeah.
Like, he never had a birthday party.
Yeah. Oh,
he
man,
didn't know what it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
But how about this? Being the guy in the park who like is playing kickball and says, you got a foster family next door, Get those kids, play kickball.
Let's
get
go play.
involved. Get
Yeah.
parents a night out. I don't know if you can do that.
Yeah.
Really, I'm not sure how that really works, but
Yeah, totally.
our
You
church
you can
kicked in.
babysit. Yeah.
You babysit. Lifegate Church. Check this out. They
Yeah.
raised, I think it was between $20,000 and $30,000 to
Yeah.
help families who were offsetting that cost. You
Yeah.
want to be involved.
Yeah.
Find a family. We can't do that. That's not where we're at in life. Fantastic. I will bet you if you contact Mark and say, Mark, I want to help a family do this, and they don't have the means, I'll bet you they could link that up 1-to-1 right now.
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. Yeah. We can get you connected.
so
We
good.
can get you involved. Yeah.
So good.
Absolutely. And be part of a church like Lifegate that values this. And I got to visit with their staff and talk to them. And, there's really good churches out there that say this is something that's important that we want to have in front of our people regularly, and encourage your church to do that, and be that kind of church.
100%. And if it's not your church, man, maybe you're like, oh, I don't go to church. Guess what? You have a powerful presence in your neighborhood. If you will just step outside, your life doesn't need to be absorbed with yourself. And it's called putting what you say you believe into action and being a person who demonstrates their faith, not by their words, not by the place they take in the political argument of the day, not by posting some, oh yeah, me too. And we have this tribal culture that just yells at each other, but by going, no, I'm going to do exactly what Jesus did.
Yeah.
A situation where they were talking to a woman who was thrown in the middle of the streets for sleeping with another guy. By the way, I wonder where the guy was.
Right.
Strangely
Nobody
not
asked
in
that.
the picture.
Yeah.
But these guys are arguing back and forth. Jesus goes, he doesn't say a word. He walks up to her. He writes something in the sand. And I think it was probably a list of the things that those guys had done. But he got involved. He stepped in between. And he stepped into a situation.
Yeah.
So many opportunities. We end every one of our conversations here on the next stage with what is the one thing? What is one thing you can do? Not just to go, man, Mark was incredible. And Rob, oh gosh, what a great thing. And boop, I got to move on. What is the one thing you can do? Mark, just refresh us again, run us down, and we'll say, here's the menu. What is one thing guys can do?
Yeah. Here's a list. Look into mentorship. Look into families in your community. Look into being a foster family, and go to an open house, either at Project 127 or at your local county, just to see what it's like. I'd encourage you, just take that step. You don't have to do it. Just go and listen and hear what the system is like, and then decide how you want to get involved.
Yeah. It's like there's a little menu, pick one.
Yeah.
Pick away.
There's so
you
many
guys
ways,
are involved not just in Denver, you're involved all over the country, right?
There's a national network. And so there are organizations that have a similar mission that are in states all over. We just launched Iowa recently, and that was really exciting. So all over the country. If you go to project127.org, you can see links to the national network and find organizations in your area.
Fantastic. I love it. And this is not, hey, wait for your pastor to do it.
Yeah.
You don't need a big program.
No.
Like it's right there, project127.org. Go find out, support, be a good neighbor at least, Oh, Mark, so good. Yeah. So good. I appreciate you being with us today. And gosh, I'd love to have you back again and let's dig into this further.
Yeah.
But thanks so much for being with us today.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. Always love to talk about this.
I can tell. And it comes out of a place. You're not just a theorist. You're a practitioner.
Yeah.
And gosh, that's awesome. Men, the next stage is not just about theory either. It's about practice. and it's about what is that one thing you can do. And so I implore you to lean into this issue of foster care and what you can do for the least of these around you. May you be a man of purpose who is living a life of impact born out of identity. And that's lasting impact when you can get involved in someone's lives. Thanks for listening to The Next Stage, and we will talk to you next time. I mean, there's a loneliness and isolation epidemic going on in our world today. 50% of men report frequent feelings of loneliness. Another 50% report not having any close friends, and 70% of men report not having a significant relationship or a conversation that goes beyond the surface level in the last week. Life doesn't have to be that way. In fact, Sherpa Unlimited has come along and said, we want to help solve that problem. And I want you to picture your world like this. Picture your world where you have other strong men around you who are heading the same direction you are. Not just yes men in your life or drinking buddies or poker playing buddies or something like that, but men where you have the opportunity to grow, to really foster the kind of life that you want, to grow that internal world that allows you to be the man you need to be at work, at home, in your community. Men who are there to challenge you, but also lift you up when you fall, and we all do. I want you to check out Sherpa Unlimited's opportunity that we have coming up. They're called Ascent Men's Communities. These are bi-weekly groups that meet literally anywhere in the world. You have to invest in these. They're not just free, but it's very affordable. You'll see. Less than the cost of a couple pizzas, and certainly less than the cost of your gym membership. Go to sherpaunlimited.com/ascent. We'll see you in one of our Ascent Men's Communities very soon.
Thanks for joining us on the Next Stage podcast for men with Rob Stout. The Next Stage helps men live with purpose, born out of identity, as men made in God's image who are shaping this world for good. The Next Stage is a production of Sherpa Unlimited Coaching for Men, based in Denver, Colorado in the United States. Learn more at sherpaunlimited.com/thenextstage, or follow Sherpa Unlimited on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram. We love feedback. Please send your feedback, questions, or requests for future content to this email, thenextstage@sherpaunlimited.com. Again, thenextstage@sherpaunlimited.com. The Next Stage distributes episodes every 2 weeks on Wednesday mornings. The Next Stage taps the wisdom of the ancient scriptures, and if you don't have a copy of the Bible, we can help you fix that. First, you can visit any public library and check one out, or visit an online or local bookstore. Alternatively, just about any Bible-believing church would be happy to give you a Bible for a nominal price, or even free. And while you're there, make a personal introduction to the pastor or his staff, and consider attending services there this Sunday. Finally, you can just download a free Bible app called YouVersion for your smartphone. Whether you have an Apple iPhone, Google Android phone, or something else, go to your phone's app store and search YOU Version and select the YouVersion Bible. Also, you can find a link for the YouVersion Bible app in the show notes of today's podcast. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you in 2 weeks.